Coming this spring to MXNBC, a groundbreaking series that will change the U.S. government and the world forever. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, under the direction of former star of The Apprentice, Donald Trump, will challenge 3 million contestants to carry their load or hit the road. That's right. We'll be asking every government employee to prove their value.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Just like in a good old-fashioned meritocracy.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming in.
What would you say it is that you do around here?
I mean, a lot of days I really do stuff. It's just there's not that much going on today.
I help Tanner and Blaze replace those heavy 5-gallon water containers.
Tune in each week as Elon and Vivek measure every federal employee's value and efficiency.
And time. So your study on how cocaine enhances the sex drive of Japanese quail. What's that worth to the American taxpayer?
I think it's priceless.
And get ready for the savings as those that don't make the cut get shown the door.
The president wants to tell you something.
Firstly, thank you for coming in today, and second, you're fired.
The Emmy Award-watching viewers of Deadwood and Idiocracy present Doge Days, the purge of the U.S. government.
There was a whole forest of dead wood out there. We got to get chopping, buddy.
Somewhere in the city that defined holiday magic is a man who wants a little eggnog with his mistletoe. And that guy would like to carol you. Featuring the musical stylings of Mel Tunney and the Dream in Color Singers. Straight ahead on That Kevin Show, breaking news on the economy and the Supreme Court. Mike Faulkender and May Mailman join us. Assignment Desk Weekend, sketch comedy from the Glorious American, Nick Peterson and the Babylon Bee. A supermodel of spokesperson elegance, Elizabeth Pipko. And the global superstars of Dan and Shay in the spotlight. And now, from Times Square, a man who has just received the latest presidential pardon from Joe Biden. Here's Dan Kevin.
I think, Dave, that you're fibbing again about my exploits. I've not received any pardon preemptively or by necessity from Joe Biden. I don't even know. I mean, if he could pardon a traffic ticket, maybe that's the most I'd have need of him for, but that's about it. I don't know why you say this stuff. Anyway, and who took my cup? My mug is gone. I don't have either my white cup with the beautiful black and red lettering on it, nor my black cup with the beautiful white and red lettering on it, because someone moved it. It was on my desk before we went to air. I don't know who did it, but it's gone. And I'm not pleased about it. I'm blaming Dave. Dave, maybe you need a pardon from Joe Biden. Go check that out. Hey, welcome to the weekend. Glad to have you with us. What a show we've got for you tonight. Did you enjoy the Glorious American cold open there? I think we've got a new comedy troupe that's going to be rotated into the mix. They're doing some really funny stuff. But I almost want Elon to do this. Do a reality show of you and Vivek going through the government with your click pens and your clipboard, and you're filling out the forms, and you're getting rid of the people that aren't doing anything. Do it, please. I beg of you. Friends, I'm so excited about what we're going to get into in January, because we're just going to be, you ever have that one room in the house that you just leave all the crap in? It's just a room full of crap, not literal crap, just figuratively. You've just got all the junk in there that you don't put anywhere else. And then there's that one time in like a decade where after your bride has told you she's basically going to beat you over the head with a drum if you don't get in there and get it done, and you go in there and you clean it out, and when it's all done, you're like, wow, there's a room in here again. Imagine that feeling 365 days of the year with our government. Imagine a clean, clutter-free, excruciatingly efficient government that is working the way it's supposed to. Because you know what happens when you clean out the room of all the junk? Then that room actually becomes a useful room again, and you can turn it into an office or a nursery or a guest bedroom or whatever you've got in there. But getting it cleaned up is key to making that happen. That's what Vivek and Elon are going to do for the whole of government. I'm so excited, friends. I cannot tell you how excited I am. I also can't express to you my very, very grave concern tonight. There is a journalism outlet that I had previously been able to trust that I'm having real trouble being able to put much faith in anymore. In fact, they did something a few years ago that I thought would even be more helpful in the remanding of the trust to their brand, but they violated that. I'm talking about the sad, sad, sad fall of the Babylon Bee and how it's become a completely untrustworthy publication. You used to be able to read the Babylon Bee headlines and say, you know what? I know for a fact that this is parody. And now, and just to be really clear, they started a second site called Not the Bee, where they would actually put real headlines up, and you would say that's not parody. But this week, they were just immensely disappointing because look at some of the headlines. This one here, Daniel Perry, 3 jurors attacked on subway, and it's going to impact the case. Now, that's supposed to be parody. But on my show on Thursday night, when Imran Ansari, the former incredible litigator in New York, now he heads the civil litigation for Idala, Bertuna, and Kamens, when he came on, when he was talking to me about this case on my show on Thursday night, he said, Kev, I've got to tell you, when I was coming into the city this morning, I was on a subway, and there was a guy doing pull-ups on the bar saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. The Babylon Bee is supposed to be where we go to find the parody and the funny in life, not to report the hard news. Kev, it's just one time. No, it's not. Look at this. Supreme Court to face moral dilemma over whether or not doctors with blades can chop off body parts. That's supposed to be parody. And yet, at the Supreme Court, and we got May Mailman coming on tonight to talk about it, they're actually arguing over whether or not this is morally right or wrong. It's supposed to be parody, but they're ruining their brand, and they're losing the faith and trust of their audience to be funny and not true. There's too much truth in it. And even though they started Not the Bee, that's supposed to be the place where you can reliably get the true stuff, they're starting to put the true stuff into the Babylon Bee. You talk about a letdown in journalism. I mean, we've all seen how the mainline journalists have just gone from telling anything remotely resembling truth to just whatever they flat out want to make up. But if the Babylon Bee insists on going away from telling the lies and being funny about it and calling it parody, and they start putting actual truth on their headline, I don't know what the world's coming to. What can we possibly do if the Babylon Bee doesn't give me parody? I depend on that parody. It is my saving grace to open the Babylon Bee and go, here's the funny stuff. It's not true. Thank goodness. No, they should just, if this is the way they're gonna be about it, they should just board up the Not the Bee and just tell us flat out. Just tell us. Lord knows the other side won't tell us that they're telling us lies flat out. If the Babylon Bee insists upon telling us truth, they should just come out and say it. By the way, I don't know if this one's true or not, but there are more pardons coming down. And this one's kind of scary in terms of the specific Applebee's between this time and this time. What's that all about? Anyway, we'll get into the pardons. We got some of that coming up. We've got an incredible show for you tonight, friends. I hope you stick around because it's going to be the best. We've got a brand new sketch comedian with us tonight too, Nick Peterson. You do not want to miss his stuff, and it's coming up. I'm just telling you in advance. And then we got Dan and Shay, the most heralded and the most awarded artists in country music over the last several years, and they've never been on the New Music Spotlight. They've made the holiday spotlight. So that's straight ahead. Anyway, by the way, we are running out of time. I want to say thank you for those of you that have stepped up and helped us reach now 188 former slaves and gotten them home. But there are 20 slaves that we have not gotten home yet. CSI is helping us do this by bringing them home this Christmas and giving them their freedom and their life. A brand new life can be started for $250. It gives them everything they need to start that life. Will you call 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, and help liberate one of the 20 slaves that remain? We need your help. You can also go to bringherhome.org to do it. Bringherhome.org. Stick around. Dan and Shay, Elizabeth Pipko, sketch comedy. It's That Kevin Show.
That Kevin
Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. Kevin McCullough, Times Square, New York. Glad to have you with us. And we frequently discuss some of the headier, weightier things of what government is going to be doing, especially in the new administration as the transition to a new government continues. One of the really amazing American unique aspects is that we transition power peacefully from one administration to the next every 4 years, and it is a sight to behold. Mike Faulkender is the former assistant secretary to the Treasury on economic policy for Trump 1.0. Michael has not been tapped yet for Trump 2.0, but who knows? That could come down any minute now as we're watching these nominations continue to be put forward at a torrid pace. I mean, this is really record-setting stuff when you think about it. But let's welcome in Michael back to the broadcast. Mike, good to see you again. Thanks for being here. Of course, your day job right now is the American First Policy Institute.
That's right. Chief economist here, working with Larry Kudlow and the team we have here to recognize what kind of economic policies that the next America First administration should implement, and advising the incoming transition team on some of the things they might do to get the economy back to the way we had it prior to the pandemic.
Well, I got to tell you, over the last 4 years, AFPI became my number one go-to think tank resource. There's been lots of people in Washington that have done a good job on different policy for a long time, but I think the thing that they were all missing was that overarching Trump unique perspective, which was if we don't put America first, we have no business doing what we're doing. And I think that a lot of the bloat, I'm just going to use that word for it, in Washington, D.C. has come from this kind of forever thinking that we're just going to always have the same programs and positions and spots to fill and everything else. And this administration, I think one of the things that has really excited people my age, but even the younger generation than me, is that Washington, D.C. is going to look significantly different when Trump 2.0 is done. And Michael, let's talk a little bit about what that's going to look like from just economic policy. How will the new Treasury Department operate compared to the one that's there presently?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that the next administration is going to do is focus on energy dominance. So that while that won't be headquartered per se out of Treasury, you know, what the president ran on was getting affordability back to the American people. And so the Treasury Secretary is the chief economic officer of the nation. And one of the things that we have been advocating here at AFPI is that because energy costs permeate the entire economy, they impact the cost of manufacturing, the cost of transportation, the cost of just heating and cooling our homes and offices. All of the inflation that we have seen, a significant portion of it is coming from the fact that energy prices have gone up so much. And so everything we can do at Treasury, or everything the incoming administration can do at Treasury to help bring down energy prices, and on the Treasury side, what that means is taking another look at the way that they implemented the Inflation Reduction Act. So the parts of it that survive any kind of legislative activity that will happen upon the president coming into office and the new Congress, they took an approach in implementing it that, as you used, it really, the best word to describe it is bloat. They took a set of tax credits and did as much as they can to really impose things like electric vehicles on the entire population that are expensive, that the American people don't want, and that was done through the tax code. And that's where Treasury comes into play. So while a lot of energy dominance is going to be over in the Energy Department and the Interior Department and the EPA, Treasury has a very important tax role to play. And on the energy side, it's things like tax credits for different energy sources. And you have seen the Biden administration really focus not just on moving us away from fossil fuels, low-cost, reliable sources of energy through the tax code, but I guess the other place that Treasury plays a really big role is in the banking sector. And they have made it more and more difficult for our nation's banks to lend to fossil fuels, whether it be exploration and production, whether it be refining, whether it be the sales of it at the local gas pump. We have got to get energy prices down so that we can bring down the price of everything else. And so Treasury, through the implementation of the tax code and making available credit for the private sector to once again innovate and lower costs, those are really, I think, the things that the next Treasury Secretary is going to focus on.
I can't tell you how much you're singing my song, and it's not just because I'm a very, 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 very minor partner in a domestic energy company, but this is the salve for the economic woes that have beset us for the last 4 years. And I don't know, I just stumbled across it last night, but I don't know if people have seen this new show called Landman. It's not a kid-friendly show. It's for adults. It's on Paramount. But last night, Billy Bob Thornton's character had a soliloquy about the importance of fossil fuels that I have not heard in American entertainment anywhere. Just how vital they are to everything that we do. And when the previous administration basically, in essence, declared war on them and everything we could do to try to maximize them. And Michael, it's not like we're Venezuela or China. We're not digging this stuff up in the dirtiest way possible. We're doing everything in light of everything that we know about the environment and can do with the environment. We're doing it in the cleanest, most efficient ways that it's being done on planet Earth. But we were the bad guys because we wanted to have inexpensive, abundant energy at our resources. And that is the key to society's breaking through and becoming next level in terms of everyone prospering even more.
That's absolutely right. If you look at the things in human history that have done more to lower global poverty, it is free market capitalism and it is access to low-cost, reliable sources of energy.
Yep.
And as you just said, this idea that we're going to cede all of this activity to the Chinese and the Venezuelans. Remember, when the people on the left sit there and say, oh, we don't want to do that activity here in the United States because it's going to have environmental impact, they're kind of presuming that it's therefore not going to happen. That's false. It is going to happen. It's going to happen in other places around the world. So, like oil and gas.
Yeah, dirty little secret, AOC. In the 4 years your dude was on duty, we used more oil and gas than we did when Trump was there. And
that's right.
Globally. And because we weren't supplying a bunch of it, that means dirty sources got used more.
And so you think about all of that requires refining. We are not expanding refining capacity here in the United States. Where are they refining capacity? It's China. Does anybody believe that the refined oil and gas coming out of Chinese refineries is more environmentally friendly than what we would do here in the United States? So exporting that economic activity, exporting those jobs, exporting that wealth, and in the process making the environment worse, not better, it's entirely the opposite of what the left would have you believe. And that's why it was rejected by the American people.
Yeah,
But before we go on from energy, let me also just say, if we are going to realize the innovation from artificial intelligence, that requires a lot of energy. And that means that any new renewables that are brought online must be additive. They are not going to replace the energy we get from oil and gas. They are going to add to it because our energy needs are growing, not shrinking.
He's Michael Faulkender, former Assistant Secretary to the Treasury for Economic Policy for the first Trump administration. He is now with America First Policy Institute, watching some of the same issues and advising the transition team currently. When we come back, we're going to talk more about what the appointment to the Treasury means for Mr. Dissent and also Mr. Wright over at Energy. Stay with us.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next. That Kevin Show. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back, Kevin McCullough. Glad to have you with us. Times Square is the locale, New York City, of course, and we are watching as the kind of whole epicenter of global politics is changing. So many nominations, so many different style of nominee from past administrations. And Michael Faulkender rejoins us from the America First Policy Institute. And Mike, not just at Treasury or at Energy, but up and down the roster, you're talking about disruptors that are going to be put in charge of whole sections of government where, you know, I started the last segment off with the word bloat. We are going to cut that bloat. We are going to get rid of that. And we're going to have a leaner and meaner government that's going to be able to be much more responsive in many ways because of the lack of that dead weight. But when it comes to Treasury specifically, and this is your expertise, this team is going to be, besides energy, looking to do what? There was a lot of discussion towards the end of the first Trump term about getting into crypto. What does the privatization of markets look like? How does the Treasury Department interact with the Fed? And do you see battles there in the days to come? The value of the dollar? How do we reclaim dominance? There's a lot of big issues that Treasury has to deal with.
That's right. And so let me add to that list, because right out of the gates, the thing that Secretary-designate Bessent is going to have to deal with is that we've got a lot of the Trump tax cuts that are expiring in 2025, and the debt ceiling expires on January 1st. And so right off the bat, as soon as he is confirmed by the United States Senate, he's going to have to step in to lead the negotiations on behalf of the incoming administration to extend tax reform and then get it implemented. And he's going to have to work on the debt ceiling expiration, and that's going to have to be extended as well. So he's got that going on. Plus, as you said, the president-elect has indicated that he wants, once again, the United States to be dominant when it comes to the innovation in the payment system and in cryptocurrencies. Unfortunately, again, under the Biden administration, their fear of this innovation and their desire for government to control everything means that they have really curtailed a lot of that crypto innovation occurring here in the United States. And just as we discussed in the last segment, it's not as if that stops. It moves abroad. And so, you know, I for the first time ever in my adult life, I am hearing technology innovators tell them that it's better to innovate in Europe than in the United States. As somebody who is a proud America, part of the America First movement, the notion that we would ever cede one of the most innovative sectors of our economy to the Europeans is just a frightening thought. And so that means that Treasury has got to get in there and immediately create a regulatory environment such that that innovation takes place here in the United States.
I think that there was so much on the plate for the voter this go around that was so wrong in so many people's lives that you could almost get lost in the endless details of policy that needed to be adjusted just to get life back to, say, a sane kind of normal range of living. When you start talking about crypto and currencies and innovation and AI and energy needs, and let's extend that to defense and to state and to the development of weapons and hyperballistic missiles and all the technologies that we have fallen down on, Michael, we have really set ourselves back over the last 4 years on some of the areas we needed to be the most forward thinking on. I mean, just in defense, we were defending pronouns and we weren't talking about getting ships built. I mean, It's that kind of nonsense that allows a great nation to suddenly become a very middle of the road nation. And I want to see us keep this kind of lethal edge. That's another military term, but in the global economy, in the development of not just our own currency, but in the dominance of the strength of the dollar. What do we have to do, interest rate wise, from your perspective, in the first 6, 8, 18 months to ensure that we're going to have the small business explosion, that we're going to have the reimagination and reinvention into entrepreneurialism, that we're going to get the small business community back on its feet. What has to happen in terms of policy?
Yeah, so let me preface this by saying that I have said to many audiences going into the election that this is the most stark choice for the American people in my lifetime.
Yep.
And it really was a choice between, do we want to empower the private sector, those Main Street small businesses that you were talking about, or do we instead think that it's government that needs to lead on all of the innovation? And we saw all of the areas where we ceded ground abroad because government had failed to keep ahead of all of those opportunities. And so I think that you're going to see not only the energy dominance and the extension of tax reform, but the deregulation that the next Trump administration is going to lead. You know, the president in the first term had a goal of removing 2 regulations for every new one enacted. I think you're going to see a larger ratio than that. And it's not just going to be the number of regulations, but the dollar impact of the regulation.
Mike Faulkender, we appreciate all that you've done at AFPI. I'd love to see you back in Trump 2.0. Who knows if that'll happen, but thank you for what you did in Trump 1.0.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next.
That Kevin
Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square, and a very Merry Christmas and holiday season to you as we are winding our way through December. It is kind of a lull if you think about it in terms of news intensity, in terms of what's going on, but the transition continues. And at the same time, there's some activity at the Supreme Court these days. Here to discuss is May Mailman. She's the director for the Independent Women's Law Center, and she's become a regular here at That Kevin Show. May, it's good to see you again.
Hi, it's great to be back.
You observed the arguments this week that the different sides in the transgender law from Tennessee, the case that's worked its way up to the court, that are being argued. You've written a piece for Fox News that came out on Thursday of this week, I think. What were your takeaways, and how do you think this impacts that all-important subject matter that you guys at the Independent Women's Forum have been on since before almost everybody else?
Yeah, so this is the first, I think, big transgender case after the Bostock opinion, which said that employers couldn't fire people for being transgender. And then since that case, there have just been 1,000 questions percolating of then do people have to let men into women's sports, men into women's locker rooms? And then this case is specifically, can states protect minors from chemical and surgical castration? So more than 20 states do protect those minors. And the ACLU said, no, you can't do that because that's sex discrimination. Why is it sex discrimination? Because men can have access to testosterone, but women can't. But
no, it's because we live in some sort of weird universe that these people don't think about anything in normal context anymore. But I sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Right. So it's a crazy theory because, of course, that's not the case. Nobody can have access to gender transition, or what I call sex trait modification, at all. It has nothing to do with whether you're a woman or a man. It has to do with whether you're a minor living in the state of Tennessee and you can't be castrated. So it seems like the Supreme Court is going to let Tennessee have their law. This is not going to be sex discrimination. We're not going to put a constitutional lens on it. And I think it's not going to be close. I would expect 6-3. But it wasn't all upside. I mean, I do think that clearly Justice Alito understands what's going on here, that this is the mutilation of minors. Clearly, Justice Thomas also understands that men and women are different and that this has nothing to do with sex discrimination. But I think the remainder of the justices, even the ones on the conservative side, do buy in a little bit. For example, Justice Barrett called the female who is identifying as a male who's arguing for the ACLU, called this person Mr. Well, it's not a Mr. At least just don't say the pronoun. But so there were some things that I didn't love. of, but I think that ultimately this case is going to come out on the right side.
I find that discouraging because Amy Coney Barrett has a number of daughters. And I just, this issue, it just takes on, to me, every day that I see my 9-year-old come in and say, Dad, thanks for taking me to school this morning, wada. It just seems to take on more and more personal importance in my own mind. And I don't understand how someone on the court might not see that as clearly, especially when family's been clearly something so important to her.
Yeah, I still think that some people are buying into this idea that it's kind to play the pronoun game, or that you can acknowledge that some people, maybe not everybody, but some kids should have access to these types of drugs. And I think that's more what Justice Kavanaugh said. Well, there's arguments on both sides. The medicine is evolving. Shouldn't we just leave it to the states? And the thing is, don't buy into this lie. Don't buy into the lie that castrating anybody is a kind thing. These are kids. We can have, I'm not willing to have the conversation, but other people are willing to have the conversation about what adults can do with their bodies. These are kids. This
yeah, that's where I draw the line. They're off limits completely. You don't even get to go there. Again, whatever adults do, that's a different conversation. But the state having say, and in some instances, usurping parents' rights on some of these issues, that's not going to wash. I don't think the American people will do that. In your piece at Fox News, you were surprised by one justice in particular, and you said rather dramatically, what happened with Justice Gorsuch?
Right. So Justice Gorsuch loves to talk during oral arguments. He loves to press his arguments. He loves to make jokes, loves to have a conversation. And he said not a single word the entire time. And that would be weird normally, but it was especially weird here because that Bostock opinion that I mentioned to you that really inspired much of the transgender litigation, not only in this case, but in a bunch of areas. Like, it is the number one case that's cited when you're talking about men's right to enter women's spaces. That was Justice Gorsuch's opinion. He was the one who said sex discrimination means discrimination on the basis of transgender status, which means treating men as men and women as women. So his opinion really did spark all of this. And so you would have thought that he would have engaged either to defend his opinion, to explain his opinion, to narrow it, to expand it, something, nothing.
Maybe, and I'd like to know your thoughts on this, maybe his body language is telling us that he's not as confident in his previous opinion as he was when he wrote it.
Yeah, it's tough because in Bostock, he said, today's decision doesn't extend beyond this decision. So yes, I'm saying you can't fire somebody for being transgender, but that has nothing to do with bathrooms, nothing to do with sports, nothing to do with medicine, nothing to do with religion. And of course, it has something to do with all of those things.
So he purposely did not allow his decision to extend into those areas.
Well, he said that, but the dissent said, what are you doing? Of course it applies to all of those things. Of course, if you say sex discrimination is discrimination on the basis of transgender status, of course it affects religion. Of course it affects locker rooms. Of course it does. And so now I think he's stuck because he has both said, my opinion doesn't extend beyond that, and now it so clearly has. And so do you have to admit that your carve out was right? Like, what do you do? And so that's why I was so interested. And I actually just don't know what's going on in anybody's head, but also Justice Gorsuch's head.
Yeah. May, always appreciate it. You are one smart cookie, and we sure are benefiting from your insights. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Kevin McCullough coming right back from New York. Don't go away.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next.
That Kevin Show.
I used to believe everything I'd see on the news, but that's before I discovered a brain.
A brain is meant for everyday use. Those living with moderate to severe stupidity have seen immediate improvement in common sense with a brain.
I thought the government had my best interests at heart. And then a friend told me about a brain.
Talk to your doctor about what news sources you obey. A brain may also lower your desire to take life-altering advice from celebrities.
Getting lectured about my carbon footprint from people with 3 private jets used to make sense. But thanks to a brain, now I can think for myself every day. When my disregard for 3rd grade biology began to flare up, I knew it was time for a brain.
Do not try a brain if you're allergic to a brain. Common side effects may include accountability, discernment, homeschooling your kids, a better understanding of economics, awareness of the stupidity of socialism, and diarrhea.
For tethering yourself to reality, the only no-brainer is choosing a brain. Ask your doctor if a brain is right for you.
For more information, visit tryabrain.com.
Somewhere in the city that defines holiday magic is a man who wants a little eggnog with his mistletoe. And that guy would like to carol you. Featuring the musical stylings of Mel Tunney and the Dream in Color Singers. Still to come on this winter evening, assignment desk weekend, sketch comedy from Nick Peterson and the Babylon Bee, the lovely and amazing Elizabeth Pipko, and more Dan and Shay in the holiday spotlight.
Christmas time, ho, 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 jingle all the way.
And now from Times Square, who, if he ever was cast as a Batman villain, would most likely be Two-Face, because he's half Santa and half Grinch. Here's the cover.
Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. President-elect Donald J. Trump's threat of tariffs continues to get the world's attention, specifically the attention of world leaders. Justin Trudeau, for example, the person who looks like the 13-year-old Prime Minister of Canada, made a hasty visit to Mar-a-Lago this week to attempt to dissuade Trump from assigning tariffs to Canada. Assignment Desk Weekend has not been able to determine the success of the mission just yet. But apparently, in the negotiations, Trump suggested that Canada become the 51st state. No word on Trudeau's answer, though he did immediately return to Canada and begin confiscating weapons. Assignment Desk Weekend presumes this was done to limit objectors. The proposed solution also presents problems for nearly every celebrity that has fled to Canada to escape the supposed corrupt Trump administration. Assignment Desk Weekend believes that the real reason that these celebrities escaped America was to get out of reach once the Epstein files are finally opened. In shocking new developments, new evidence is surfacing that Joe and Hunter Biden, insert gasp here, may have been guilty of peddling influence, secrets, and favors for as long as a decade. The Assignment Desk Weekend did note how odd it was that the broad sweeping Hunter Biden pardon this last week that he issued to his son covered 11 years in its language. There couldn't possibly be some connection between that and this new evidence, could there? Now comes a new report that the Biden team is considering preemptive pardons, whatever that is, for Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, and Anthony Fauci. Assignment Desk Weekend would like to ask this very specific question in response. Why would those three need preemptive pardons? And finally, the Doge brothers, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, have been making rounds on Capitol Hill this week, asking each of the government employees, what exactly do you do here? You may have noted that Musk is particularly known for cleaning up sloppy operations and creating more efficient companies. In some categories that he's owned, he's laid off as many as 75% of the workforce. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas said Thursday that she's open to meeting with the pair. She openly then compared the meeting in a mocking way to an occasion where she, quote, had gone to jail to visit January 6th prisoners. Upon hearing the remark from the Democrat, Assignment Desk Weekend has learned that Vivek pulled a pen out of his coat pocket, clicked it, raised his clipboard, and said, that's very interesting. Can you tell us more about that? For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
The election made you feel on a scale from 1 to 10, with 10 being Nazi. My name is Dr. Nick Peterson, and I specialize in those suffering from TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. Hello, I'm Dr. Peterson. How are you? Well, Donald Trump is a felon. Nope. I asked how you were doing. The majority of Americans can mentally handle election results on both sides of the aisle. However, there's this small, albeit growing, group of, I don't want to say Americans, but people that are just disconnected from reality. Fascist. And honestly, it makes diagnosing these people a whole lot easier. I just check their social media.
Fascist dictator.
Gone are the days when you just search your symptoms on WebMD at home by yourself. Now they record their symptoms and post them for the world to see. The haircut is also a dead giveaway. So, what brings you in today? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's the orange democracy-destroying, Putin-loving dictator. All right, so mental illness. They are completely blind to the fact that their absurd actions and ideologies were a big factor in their party's loss. Let me ask you this. Do you even know what democracy is? Follow-up question. Do you know how Kamala Harris became the nominee? I know you're a deplorable Nazi fascist bigot. Okay, neat. Turns out that calling half the country Nazis for 4 years was not a winning strategy. And yet somehow, not even Cardi B could save him. Do you realize what I'm going through? Yep, delusions. I am losing my right to vote? What? Where are you getting your information? Whoopi Goldberg? Well, what's the remedy, you might be wondering? Well, if you ask me, it's a history lesson in Jesus, but the pharmacy doesn't offer those. I prescribe them a brain, and I send them to trybrain.com for more information. Well, I'll show you. I'm moving to Canada. That'd be great. And I'll be shaving my head. Oh, that's... no. And one last thing. I'm going on a sex strike. Your loss. Oh, no. So, you're heading home, but your family supports Trump. Not good. You're probably wondering, how can I show them I'm a good, tolerant person, and they're all terrible, intolerant people? And how can I find common ground with these rednecks who are literally Hitler? Well, you're in luck. Because I, too, am a good person who likes to share my superiority with those around me. Today, we're going to show you how to talk about Trump with your racist uncle. First, try slowly and articulately explaining to him how he is a racist, a bigot, a Nazi, and just an overall garbage person. You can even use simple visual aids if you want to. Next, you can help educate your backward, bigoted family members by handing out copies of Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. This thoughtful holiday gift will endear them to you and open up the door for more conversation later. Now, sometimes your family might disagree with you and attempt to use far-right tactics, such as facts and logic. Counter this with a powerful haka dance. Fourth, you can easily get through to these MAGA bigots, or maggots for short, by reenacting the entirety of Hamilton. Let it never be said that you threw away your shot. Here's a good one. When your arguments just aren't getting through to them, try screaming at the sky. Simple, but effective. Tip number 6. When you're encountering opinions you disagree with, just run away to a secure location. You might call it a space that is safe. If someone follows you there, then go somewhere else. and so on and so on. And finally, and perhaps most effectively, just start a good food fight. It works every time. Use these simple tips, and you'll convert your MAGA family in no time. Because you're right, and they're Nazis. Good luck out there, fellow member of the resistance. If you have any other helpful tips in dealing with your maggot family members, shout them at the sky. Works every time.
Christmas time, here we go. That Kevin Show.
Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. And it is that kind of weird part of the year, right? So the election came and went. The transition, the nominations are all lining up. Everything's kind of getting ready for the year to flip over. But here we are in the holidays, and we don't know what to do with ourselves. But I'm still going to have some great conversations, and I'm glad to have great friends coming back. My next guest is no exception to that. In fact, I think mine might have been one of the very first radio shows she ever did, at least in person. She came down and sat with us as we talked about politics in her first book many, many years ago, but she has served as the spokesperson for the GOP official capacity over the course of the campaign. Model, figure skater, writer, comedian, cook, philanthropist, all these things and more. Elizabeth Pipko, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for a very good intro. Wow.
Well, you've done a lot of things in a short amount of time, and it's very impressive. We haven't talked since before the election on this level. I mean, we text a lot, but what was your sense of relief or joy or exhaustion around 2:30 in the morning, the morning after November 5th?
I think those are probably the best terms to use. Quite a bit of relief.
All of the above?
Yeah, all the above. A lot of exhaustion. I basically collapsed that night. By night, I mean 5:30 in the morning when I got back. And when I woke up, which was 2 hours later to be back in the office, I had no voice whatsoever. So I'm convinced my body was just kind of hanging on to election day. I'd been in at least one, if not multiple different swing states every day for the last couple of weeks leading up to that point. Obviously a lot of media as well. I think one day I did like 17 hits. So the voice could have maybe fluctuated because of that, or I was probably, sick as a dog and my body knew that nothing mattered until November 5th and I had to hold on. So held on. We actually knew, I think around 10 p.m. that night, we kind of knew that we had won. The joy didn't really kick in till I ended up crying on national TV. I think I was the first person to go on TV after his victory speech that night. And of course, I cried my eyes out because it was 8 years, right? I've given this man, my entire family has given this man and this fight and this movement 8 years. So it was very emotional, but in the best way possible. And I think the joy is still going to set in. I remember in 2016, it didn't hit me what had happened and that we had won the election until many months later. So I'm sure it's all still going to hit.
Well, nobody really knew in 2016, particularly in the aftermath of the immediate, because, Hillary was shocked she had lost and the whole world was kind of, what is going to happen? This kind of outsider, stranger, Donald Trump, what's he going to do? Is the world going to end? And this election was completely different. It was, what did Trump do? What did Biden do? Who do we like better? And the overwhelming answer to that question came quite clearly and quite early on election night, as a lot of people had projected, we're not going to know for days. I was asked, I think like 2 or 3 days before the election, and somebody asked me specifically, will we know by midnight? And I said, not East Coast, but we'll probably know by the time the West Coast clicks around midnight. And if I wasn't like spot on at 2:45 or whatever it was when the network started calling it, as soon as he picked up Wisconsin, that was the end. But the interesting thing about this, Elizabeth, is that he really has a mandate to be doing what we've been watching him do with the nominations, with the policy work he's doing in advance. I just said in my column this week, I think he's going to have a whole host of executive actions ready to sign. Like the minute his hand comes off the Bible, sworn in, boom, give me a pen. I got work to do. And that was the way he was in term one. He doesn't waste a second.
No, he doesn't. And obviously this is, like you said, it's different. It was almost two incumbents going up against each other, right? Because we knew what life was like under Donald Trump, and we knew what it was like under Joe Biden and obviously Kamala Harris. So I don't even think he needs to wait a second because, like you said, the American people very loudly let the world know what they wanted, who they supported, and that they are going to be very happy with most, if not all of the decisions that President Trump makes in the next 4 years. I think we talked about it quite a bit, you and I obviously as well, but many people talked about it for the months leading up to the election. And I kept saying the excitement I was seeing was overwhelming, and it reminded me of 2016. You are one of very few people, by the way, you get all the credit in the world for saying this is what was going to happen, that he was going to take all these swing states and he was going to win with the way that he did, right? With the magnitude that he did that night. I think people still can't believe it, but that's kind of what I saw coming too. And I think it's the best possible way, obviously, to win, because now people know on both sides of the aisle, they know what the American people want. They know what they're looking for. And they know just how unhappy and disappointed they've been with the policies of the last 4 years. And I think with the Democrats in general since 2016. So I was very happy with it. And I'm curious what that means, honestly, for both parties moving forward when the American people give you such a decisive victory, right? I'm curious what that means and how both parties want to adjust after the days of Donald Trump are over.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that the media has yet to really acknowledge that it was an overwhelming victory. They're even trying to make the argument now that it wasn't a blowout. And I'm like, because they're going to say technically he falls under 50% of the vote when you count all the third party, like little crumbs that come in. And I couldn't care less. He's going to have beaten her by millions. And more importantly, by 312 votes in the Electoral College, and as you said, all 7 swing states. There wasn't any. If the swing states are the barometer of where like the center of the country is at, there's no question as to how they came down. But I am curious, Elizabeth. You did a lot of media down the stretch, and this was kind of your first like full-time gig doing media, which was, and I thought you did a very impressive job. So kudos to you, by the way. But all this talk about CNN and MSNBC cleaning house, rethinking their strategies, saying we have to do something completely different, maybe even being sold. I mean, there's a joke that Elon Musk might buy MSNBC and call it MXNBC. It would be kind of interesting if that occurred. But do you think that there is a kind of reckoning, a kind of come to Jesus, if you will, that the mainstream networks who largely just lied to the American people for 4 years, every night after night, do you think that there's some soul searching going on?
I do. Unfortunately, I think majority of the soul searching comes from losing revenue, right? Like, let's be honest, it's not because they genuinely want to connect with the American people. It's because without that connection, they lose money and they lose viewers. So unfortunately, we have to be a little honest about that. But the fact is they lost in a very big way. They are now caught red-handed, not only lying to the American people for many years, but lying to the entire world about what the American people stood for and believed, because none of them predicted this was going to happen. None of them thought it was humanly possible that Donald Trump won the popular vote. Now trying to clean up their answers and saying you didn't win by too much is not helpful. The entire world knows where the American people stand, and they know what happened, right, on November 5th. Everybody knows what happened, and everyone knows when you win all swing states in that fashion, the American people have spoken very clearly, and that's the man that they wanted for the job. So I think it's sad that they're looking maybe a little introspectively for the wrong reasons. But the fact is we do need more honesty in our media, and we need more conversations, right? We don't need someone on the left tuning into MSNBC and getting a very different reality check than they do if they tune into a different network. We need more people, more disagreements on the same network sitting together so the American people can see the difference, and maybe we can come together on very basic issues and not try to divide the American people before.
What an awesome thought.
Elections.
Like having actual conversation. You know, people used to do that in person, actually. Sometimes they'd get together and do that as friends. She's Elizabeth Pipko. I'm Calvin McCullough. We're coming right back from New York. Stay here.
Christmas time, here we go. That Kevin Show.
is from New York, that Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back from Times Square. It's That Kevin Show. She was my very first guest when we relaunched this show as That Kevin Show. Mr. Whatley and Ms. Trump, when they took over the party, had a real uphill battle in terms of personnel internally and also philosophy. Their predecessors did not want to push the voter integrity issue very hard. And Laura came in and really made that the defining point of her leadership with the RNC. She said, we are going to have accountable votes. And she staffed up lawyers and she got poll watchers. And it was a record grassroots effort to have a clean election this time. And I thought it was interesting that the only states that Kamala Harris actually won were ones where voter ID is not required. Are we going to see some movement on that front, do you think, nationally, or at least in the 19 states that Kamala won?
No, I actually do. If you look at the stats, right, if you look at the public opinion, people do want voter ID. It's such a basic...
It's a bipartisan thing. It's eight out of 10.
And it's so basic, right? If you ask the average person, they tell you, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I can't go take a test, for school without bringing in my ID. I actually remember when I got into the University of Pennsylvania, I was so excited to get my little ID card because I finally looked good in the picture. And I remember when they gave it to me, they said, you can go with this on the bus, you can go do this, do that, and you can vote with it. And I thought that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. And then I went that night and I looked up these laws and I realized you don't need ID. Not only do you not need ID, you can actually use school identification like this, which countless people in my class obviously had who were not American. So I was terrified that night. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. I remember going back to thinking about that night when I took this job and when I heard that Chairman Whatley and obviously our co-chair Lara Trump were taking over. I want to give them full credit. A lot of people like to ask for credit. Both of them are not those people. They don't take the credit that they deserve. And I want people to understand how much effort they put into this job and how much it meant to both of them, right? They weren't just taking it on for themselves. They weren't taking it on for Donald Trump. They were taking it on and taking on the responsibilities of the job that they chose to take on because that's what the American people asked for. They genuinely looked inside themselves every single day to make sure they were doing exactly what the voters wanted. They felt as though they were serving not the Republican Party, not the establishment, but the American people. And it was an honor to work with both of them.
Well, I want to make this very clear. People say, does party leadership make a difference? When you consider the kind of being caught by surprise aspect of the 2020 election, and I remember Eric Trump being on my show 3 days before the 2020 election in November, and I asked him, hearkening back to the hanging chads of the Bush era, I said, Eric, are you ready for what's potentially being thought of as going to be a big fraud effort with the COVID protocols and all the special rules that the states made, which mostly have been turned unconstitutional by the judges now, by courts. And I remember him kind of feeling a little nervous at my question because I don't think he expected it. And of course, afterwards was too late for us to really be able to change and challenge vote counts once they'd been certified. It was just too big of a monster to try to bring down. So starting early, Laura and Mr. Whatley getting involved and being resilient, but it really did matter. I don't know the final number, maybe you do, but I had heard that there were over 200 litigations in early vote and on election day that the kind of swamp the vote effort from the RNC addressed, had judges weigh in on, got decisions, and actually forced districts to do what was right.
Yeah, look, I want people to understand they did this for the American people. I remember when Lara Trump said she wanted hundreds of thousands of volunteers, people actually laughed at her thinking that wasn't going to happen. And we actually did end up.
Republicans laughed at her.
Yeah,
I heard,
exactly.
I had Republican friends like, yeah, that's never going to happen. And she did
it's
it.
Exactly what happened. She did it. And it's not because she set out for this goal for herself. It's because she knew, because she actually liked President Trump, by the way, who doesn't get enough credit for this either. She listens to the American people. There's a reason they win in the way that they do. It's because they don't just do it for the job or for the role or for the accolades that come after in case you win. They just want the American people to get what they are asking for. They actually take the job seriously because they know that they were put there for a reason. I watched Lara Trump say that. I watched the response and I watched how proud she was when it happened, not because she was proven right, but because the American people were finally getting what they asked for. And they were proven right, that hundreds of thousands of people were willing to go out, be poll workers, be the poll watchers, stand up for the integrity of our elections and for this country that they love so much. And I watched everything matter to her in a way that I'd never seen it matter to someone before that. That goes for her and Chairman Whatley. And it was exciting for me to see that. I think it was exciting for people as well who were hesitant but curious about voting Republican for the first time, maybe, to listen to both of their words, hopefully mine as well, maybe in the media, but to watch people that were genuinely excited to take on this job and represent not the Republican Party, not even Republicans, but any Americans that were curious or interested in possibly voting Republican for the first time. It meant so much to them, and I think that's why it worked.
Yeah, no, and there's no doubt about it. Well, Elizabeth, thank you for always being available and for chatting with us and giving us your thoughts and insights on all of it.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next.
That Kevin
Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
And welcome back, Kevin McCullough. Glad to have you with us. We've got a little bit to go in tonight's show. And for those of you that have already called and helped liberate a slave, thank you. There were 27 at the start of the evening that we needed to try to help. And again, of the millions of households that this show reaches just via television, it's like 67 million households that can get us on any given time. And then besides that, the 300 radio stations, there's got to be 20 people tonight that can help us get one slave across the finish line and bring her home. That's the reason why it's bringherhome.org. We want to make sure that these slaves who have been separated from their family for more than a dozen years on average, sometimes as many as 15, 20, 25 years, have a chance to this Christmas be home with their family. And if you give that gift tonight of $250, that's going to give that slave everything they need to reestablish a life in their home village area where they came from, where they were taken in South Sudan. And the rejoicing and the party that will be held by not just the Christian Solidarity International staff, but the church, the village, the relatives that they still have, this is going to be an amazing homecoming for every one of them. And we have the chance to see to it that these final 27 can be helped. I just need 27 of you to do one slave each. And by the way, just to incentivize you, we've had a very generous donor earlier in the year tell me, Kev, on your big night, we will match every gift that comes in. So we could actually do more than that if you give right now. 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. But how does it all work? Well, you give your gift. Currently, negotiations are underway for the release of that slave. And then when that slave is finally liberated, they are brought back to South Sudan. There's a recovery camp where they are able to just rest, seek medical care, get counseling, relearn their name, sometimes learn how to write again. There's all kinds of additional support that they get there. And then after a period of recovery, they're given their bag of hope. And that is what they take with them when we help relocate them back to their home village, their home area, relatives, if they have family members, if they don't, if they just have a community that they remember being a part of. And if none of that rings a bell, then there are several communities of former slaves, women that were equally mistreated amongst many slave masters, and they have come together and formed a sisterhood and communities that are able to allow each other to worship, allow each other to share with one another their burdens, their scars, the problems that they faced. And so wherever they land long term, they end up in a healthy place that is good for them. And what is in that $250? Well, you're going to give them enough food for the coming year, for a full year's worth of food. You're going to give them seed to plant for the following year's worth of food. And so it's a cycle that will keep on going. You're going to give them all kinds of utensils to help make their life, whether it's cooking or cleaning or gardening or fishing, whether it's things to help keep them warm like blankets and tarps, things that help protect them from the weather. other items that they may need, feminine items, medical items, depending on what their situation is. They may need a crutch or a crane or something else to be able to hobble along with. Whatever it is, that's what your $250 will supply. And then the cherry on the sundae is this little she-goat that they're going to be able to raise and have other goats with. It gives them a little micro enterprise. It gives them a business to start for the rest of their life. It's got milk and cheese and all the things that they need. Friends, you are changing lives when you do this right now. So I'm going to ask you, don't be shy. Step up to the plate. Help us get these final 27 slaves taken care of. And that'll bring us to the 208. We'll clear the list of every name that had been on it since the start of the year. And it'll be a Merry Christmas for every one of them. So will you help us? This is the one time of year we're going to come and kind of blow the show out to ask you to help. But if you'd help us right now, it'd mean everything. BringHerHome.org. BringHerHome.org.
My name is Nanya Newt. I was about 15 years old when I was captured. My mom had spent the last few days teaching me all about what it meant to be a good wife and a mom, showing me how to cook and sew. She had hoped I would get married in the future. One day I was out collecting firewood, and that was when the Arabs found me and captured me and took me to Sudan without the chance to tell my family goodbye. It took me many days to walk the complete journey. They gave us boiled sorghum as we went, and the men that had been captured with us faced grave dangers. They were considered to be spies, and most of them were killed right in front of us. Upon arrival in the north, I was sold to a master in Miriam village, and then I was sold almost as quickly to another Arab in Magalagate. He made me work for his family, sweeping the compound and washing the dishes. They worked me long and terrible hours, pounding sorghum, fetching water, and then they said in order to be a good Muslim woman, I would need to be circumcised. I was held down as it happened, and then I was forced to marry. Against my will, they forced me to work even when I was sick. And if I did anything that made them angry, they would beat me. My master never bought me any clothes, never paid me for any of my work, and barely ever fed me. Then one day, I heard about a CSI retriever, and I ran to find them in the town. As it turned out, they were freeing slaves in my region, and they had not known about me. But I think God allowed me to find them because they brought me home. We walked that same journey back to South Sudan. And today I thank God because I am free. I thank the Arab retriever because he helped. I thank CSI and for those who gave. I cannot thank those of you who gave money to help us become free ever enough in all of my life. But I do hope that my prayer is answered, that we will not stop until they are all free.
That's the idea of what we're doing tonight, friends. And if you would like to help women just like Ajuk, who experience things, let's just face it, that none of us should ever have to face. 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, and every slave we free tonight will be matched. 888-342-1010.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next.
That Kevin Show.